Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Madmouth, joined by my longtime partner, George Eichhorn. And we have a special guest tonight, Ted Dawson. Let me give you a little information about Ted Dawson. Our paths crossed in the 1984 Olympics when I was actually covering him for a Southern Florida newspaper. And now, quite a few years later, Ted, here we are sharing the same airwaves again. Ted, so I know you're having a birthday tomorrow. First of all, I want to wish you a happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, welcome to the big show, Ted.
Thank you. I'm honored that you would ask me.
Well, come on. I mean, friends are friends, my friend. So it was a no-brainer. So we have a lot of ground to cover. George, obviously, and I have been in the business over 40 years, and you've been in it 54. So I'd say we have at least 125 years of sports media behind us. I didn't do the arithmetic. My father-in-law, Fred Ebling, was better at it than I was. And I do want to say, everybody out there, that want to wish my condolences to all my family and the loss we had this past week. And we're looking forward to get up there tomorrow. But I know we have some great business to talk about tonight. So with that said, Ted, let's get to it. We're going to talk to Ted about his background in LA, as well as the other stops that he's made and what other topics we can getting around to. But that said, you worked in LA 20 years. Describe what it was like working in the number 2 media market.
It was really fast-paced and really exciting, and then it got kind of boring, quite frankly, because you couldn't really cover things. I had to get a helicopter so I could go to Angel games, because I was on the air at 6 o'clock. And I mean, I never made a Lakers tip-off because I couldn't get there in time. Now, the Dodgers were right close to the station, but I could never get to an Angels game unless I took the helicopter. So that was a problem. And if you wanted to do a story the way I learned to do later, you had to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning and you were still going until midnight. Because to get a camera crew and all that sort of thing, you had to go at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, and it just made for an incredibly long day. And then, of course, every weekend, I was traveling someplace for Wide World of Sports.
Wow. Yeah, tell me about your Wide World of Sports experience.
Well, I did the up close and personal stories. So those are the stories I did, where I'd go and I'd find an athlete and do the background, that sort of thing.
You know, that's interesting that you mentioned that. If I can interject, Scott, because two guys from Detroit that worked for Wide World were Bill Fleming and Dave Giles. Yeah, that's great.
Bill really well.
That was a great show, as Scott and I know, growing up, and you too. I mean, that was Jim McKay's baby and Roone Arledge, and that's great that you worked for them.
Yeah, Jim was really something.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's unbelievable working on a Wide World of Sports. Everybody in our era realized that was what you look forward to every weekend.
Yep.
By the way, you remember the agony of defeat guy?
Yes.
The ski jumper. Well, I got to meet him. He was he actually was there in 1984 in Yugoslavia, and he's from Yugoslavia. And it turns out he wasn't even hurt. In fact, he competed the next day, and he had all kinds of stories to tell about that event. Of course, he was famous for being the agony of defeat.
No kidding. Wow, that's unreal.
That is.
All right, so let's talk about during that time when our paths crossed, Ted, the Russians boycotted the Olympics. Do you feel the event was still a worldwide success despite the fact that they didn't show up? And what events did you cover during the Olympics? I know Michael Jordan and Bob Knight were obviously paired up with the U.S. basketball team. So
yeah, I did basketball, but the big thing I did was the horse events with Prince Philip. He was the color guy, and I covered a lot of the dressage and the jumping events and that sort of thing. And then I covered from the local station. I covered some of the track events and that sort of thing.
All right. Did you have a chance? I'm sorry, George. Did you have a chance to cover Bob Knight and Michael Jordan? What did you think about that?
Sure. Yeah. And George Thompson also was there.
Okay. Yeah, that was I mean, we all knew that the U.S., once the Russians bowed out, were probably going to blow through it anyways with Bob Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Soviets, of course, cleaned up in 1980 in Moscow, I believe, that when they hosted the Olympics and the U.S. was not there. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Scott, the U.S. kind of blew out everybody in 1984. We won more gold medals, obviously, than any other Olympics, but there was still good competition, Ted. But it just wasn't the same without the
The
Soviets on
Chinese weren't there either for gymnastics.
Oh yeah, they've always fielded good gymnastics programs.
I remember President Reagan opened those games, didn't they? Didn't he, Ted, at the Coliseum?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Declared the games open. Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny story about Bob Knight. I was kind of controversial in those days, and I like to stir up stuff. And like Tommy Lasorda and I always had an ongoing feud, and that's the best I think. So I thought, well, I'm gonna really get into it with Bob Knight, and he and I are gonna go round and round, and it's gonna be really good TV. Well, he couldn't have been nicer, just sweet, and no matter how I tried to gig him, he just was just as sweet and nice as he could be.
Really? Wow.
I ran into him later. He lives in Bozeman, Montana now, and he
he
likes to fish, and we reminisced about that.
Oh, he lives in Bozeman, Montana. Really? Doesn't Phil Jackson live up that way too?
He lives in northern Montana.
Well, so what does everybody do when they get out of the media and sports world? They all go up to Montana and retire? Is that really?
Or Idaho.
Fly fish.
Wow. Really? Wow. No kidding. So you couldn't get Bobby Knight's goat, huh?
Nope, not a bit. And I tried.
Well, I know what you were like back then. You don't have to tell me. Bobby Knight is one of those people that, I mean, maybe he kind of knew. Well, he probably knew what position you had there, anyways. It's not like it being on local TV in the number 2 market. It's like, you know what? It's different, because everything in the number 2 market gets magnified anyway. So Bob Knight was on good behavior, and so I guess there was never going to be any chance for him to throw any chairs, right?
No. That's what I was hoping for, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, Ted, at least you tried anyway. So, all right, let's talk in your career, though. What was your biggest favorite or biggest event to cover?
That's so difficult. My guess, maybe it would be the Lakers Celtics series. Those were so much fun. And, of course, we had Jack Nicholson that was right there with us, and he was always messing with the crowd and that sort of thing. He once mooned the crowd in Boston Arena, and I thought we were going to get killed before we got out of there. So that was, those were the Dallas Cowboy days. Those were great. The Super Bowls with Dallas and becoming friends with Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson. I hosted Jimmy Johnson's coaching show.
Really?
In Dallas, and that was fun because I could always, in fact, I made a lot of money. I could always tell how the Cowboys were going to play and how Jimmy acted on Thursday night when we taped his coach's show. I mean, it never failed. It never failed. If he was upset and mad, you knew they were going to lose. And so I did pretty well in those days.
You did.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to stay on the LA theme for a moment, and then I'm going to go back to Jerry because now you really got me going like you always did back then, and now you've done it again. So doesn't take much to ignite me, anyways. All right, we'll talk about the Lakers and the Showtime and Magic Johnson. What was it like to get to the team then? That had to be unbelievable.
The best, absolutely the best. Magic was unbelievable, and the thing about Magic was Magic always deferred to Kareem. He always made sure that we interviewed Kareem first, that we always treated Kareem like the captain. Even though it was Magic's team, he was smart enough to defer to Kareem, who, by the way, is the smartest athlete I ever have met in all my years of sportscasting. Nobody comes close to Kareem.
Yeah, and they played at the Fabulous Forum. And they attracted such a national interest. And like you said earlier, the rivalries with the Boston Celtics were unbelievable. And then, of course, the Detroit Pistons came along and gave LA the rivalry too.
Yeah, but it was never like Boston. It was just a couple of years that Detroit was in there.
Well, no, the Boston LA history is unbelievable. You talked about Kareem, so let's go ahead and talk about him for a moment. LeBron obviously became the all-time scoring
Yeah.
champion, so to speak, and Kareem. I do know that Kareem only made one three-point shot in his career. LeBron has made a lot more. So why don't we? You've left me with a spot. LeBron over Kareem. Give me your preference.
Well, they're two different players, you know, and Kareem's in his 70s now, so I'd probably take LeBron. But Kareem was unstoppable.
Yeah,
People don't realize that. Young people don't realize that he was truly unstoppable in his prime.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's Sky Hook. I mean,
Sky Hook, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
right,
hard. I can understand it being hard to compare because, well, first of all, they play different positions too. Like you said,
Sure.
center versus
yeah.
LeBron's playing in a different era where they're letting all these guys are taking 3-point shots.
Right. No defense.
They don't want to get dirty. They don't want to get dirty under the boards. The Kareem went onto a center has to go in the paint and get under the basket to defend and rebound.
Yeah, Kareem took lots of elbows.
Yep.
All right, so let's transition over to the fact that you covered. What was it like to go from big time sports to smaller markets?
I loved it.
Did you?
I absolutely loved it. A lot of guys like Jim Hill and that just retired spent their whole careers in Los Angeles. But I got to go out and do different things. I had as much fun covering 8-man football with snow butt high to a buffalo in Montana that I ever did covering the LA Rams. I mean, it's just as much fun, just as much fan interest, and I loved it. I love small market television.
Really? Wow,
that's great. That's
all
great.
Right. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. You just mentioned it, so we'll go a little bit deeper into that. Jimmy Johnson, we know, won 2 rings, and of course, Barry Switzer got a Christmas present with the 3rd one,
yes.
Which I do believe that Barry Switzer should be thanking Jimmy 9 million times over because.
Oh, he lets Jimmy wear it half the year.
Oh, does he really? I
just made that up.
I know. I figured you would. All right. So, what's it like to work with Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones? You said
Jimmy was very tough.
Was he?
Very smart. The smartest coach I've ever known. A great. He could understand talent better than any coach I've ever known. He'd scout, and he wanted absolute authority. I don't know if you ever heard the story about how he kicked the punter off his team because the kid said he had asthma and couldn't run sprints, and Jimmy kicked him out of camp. So that's the kind of guy he was. He was tough. He was short and little. He played guard in college for Arkansas. That's a pretty good program.
Right.
And he's 160 pounds, dripping wet. So, and he played offensive guard. So, that shows you how tough he is.
Are you surprised that Jimmy Johnson left when he did? And he was one of the early ones to hang it up and go into broadcasting. But
no, he wanted control.
He could have still been a great coach for years.
Well, he went on to coach with the Dolphins afterwards.
Oh, I know that, but I'm just saying, even that he didn't last very long.
Yeah, but he just didn't. It wasn't his thing anymore. He had proved what he needed to prove in both college and in the pros, and he wanted to go fishing out of Florida. He wanted to live on his yacht, go fishing.
Yeah,
and that's what he's done for 30 years or so.
Yeah,
but when you talk about the Jones-Johnson relationship, I know there was a bit of a power struggle there too because they were both strong personalities, and we know that Jerry Jones has not won a championship since Barry. I'm not saying Barry because I really think it was Jimmy. Okay, and I'm not delusional, but I'm for all intents and purposes. Okay, Jerry Jones hasn't won anything since Jimmy left. How much do you think that this wears on Jerry? And let's face reality that Jimmy Johnson's not even in the Ring of Honor, which is even more sickening.
Well, It's because of their arguments back and forth. That's why. Because Jimmy belongs in the Ring of Honor. He did great things in the Cowboys. Jerry, Jerry is a year older than I am. I'm turning 79 tomorrow.
Right.
So, he needs to back off. He really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a black mark. I agree with Scott. The fact that Jones doesn't even have a title, and every year they say, "Oh, this is the year," but nothing happens. And Dak Prescott, that's another whole era to talk about, but he's not the answer, I don't believe, at quarterback. But yeah, Jimmy Johnson was dissed. He was dissed, and it's not right down in Dallas.
The problem is, what is the answer?
Yeah.
Dak's pretty good. Who do you replace him with?
True.
That's true. Yeah, no, I mean, that's just surreal. I
Plus,
just think,
most quarterbacks you're only good as your supporting cast. I firmly believe. Yeah, you have a good quarterback.
And Troy Aikman had a great supporting cast.
Yeah,
sure. All right, everybody, I should point out the Sports Exchange can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google. That's news to your ears, right, Ted? iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube. South Florida Tribune, we're striving for 1,000 subscribers. We're getting there. Everyone helps. So we hope you're enjoying the show. A really great night for us here on the Sports Exchange, having an opportunity to catch up with my old pal, Ted Dawson, who anybody that's been managed to be in sports media 54 years deserves a gold medal of his own. And I'm just glad he's given us some time tonight so we can reminisce a little bit, talk about new stuff as well. Ted, it's just a pleasure to have you on. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about some of your stops, okay?
Okay.
All right, we're going to start off with Reno. What'd you get out of that experience?
Well, I didn't tell you about this one.
Okay.
Because actually my first one was at the campus radio station at the University of Utah.
Okay.
Which is where I played football, not very well. So I did sports for the campus radio station.
Okay.
And then I got a job with the top 40 station in town, which was really fun because that was the highest rated station in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I became semi-famous. And I'll never forget, first time I took my check to a bank, and this good-looking teller says to me, "Oh, you're Ted Dawson?" And it was like a shot of cocaine or something. I mean, it was like, wow. I mean, here I'm this dumb-ass farm kid from Valley Center, Kansas, population 2,000, and all of a sudden I'm being recognized on the street. And I thought, this is the life for me.
Yeah, pretty cool. No, well, sometimes you have to save your stories when we get on here because I can only write so fast anyways, and I don't have to go ahead and say everything. I don't know what shorthand is, never have anyway. So all right, so I'm long past that point. I still use whiteout for anybody that wants to know. So, all right, so let's go with Utah. All right, let's talk about Reno. Did you make it to the casinos, or what did you cover? I know University of Nevada.
No, I never went to a casino because I learned real early that they don't build those great big tall buildings on winners, And I like to win, but I hate to lose. And if you're going to play the casinos, you're going to lose. It's just, my job was sportscasting. It wasn't gambling. So I never went to a casino but I did go to a lot of shows.
I can imagine.
I did that. That was kind of fun. But I got to meet some interesting people. I dated Barbara Streisand. She and I dated for a little time.
Wow.
I dated Gene King, who had a tennis camp there. That was kind of fun. So.
No kidding. Wow. So, all right, what sports did you cover in Reno? University of Nevada Wolfpack is the only thing I know about.
University of Nevada, football and basketball. Then they had a hockey team that played in Reno, and then also sometimes they'd play up at Squaw Valley, which had an open-ended ice rink. And it got so cold that my lips froze. Yeah. And now like this, with my lips frozen. It was the worst night of my life.
Did you ever make it to Lake Tahoe when you were there? I got married.
Sure. I married a girl from Lake Tahoe.
What?
I married a girl from Lake Tahoe.
Oh, did you really? Yeah, I got married in Lake Tahoe. How the
Oh,
similarities. It was great scenery, but the one I have here, I married her in Wisconsin, so it is what it is. So, all right. Well, you said you went to Portland, right? Tell me what that was
went to
about.
Portland. Um, it was just a real short trip. I went up there. I did the Trailblazers. I did the University of Oregon. And then I did a nightly sports show and a nightly radio talk show, which was really fun.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. And CBS LA heard about me. Oh, I know why. Because Bill Walton came, he was their first round draft pick of the Trailblazers.
Yeah.
And he was all this really controversial guy. And I was the only one in the media he would talk to.
Uh-huh.
So anytime CBS wanted a story about Bill Walton, they had to get it from me.
Oh, did they really?
So they saw my stuff and invited me to come to Los Angeles.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
After I was about a year and 3 months in Portland.
okay. Well, good segue. All right. You talk about LA. Anything you want to add to it at all that you haven't mentioned about LA?
Oh, it's just that, like I say, my whole life, I wanted to get to LA. That's all I ever cared about was being a sportscaster in LA because I thought it would be so much fun. And I got there, and the first week I was there, Jack Kent Cook, who at that point owned the Lakers, had a press briefing at the Forum, and he invited us all for lunch. And he popped this champagne, and he was pouring champagne, and guys were drinking out of a bottle. And he got drunk, and some of the sportscasters got drunk. And I thought, God, is this what I've worked so hard for? I just thought, I'm not so sure this is what I want. But I ended up staying there and raised a family there, and still have some great friends there.
Yeah, like you said, you were there 20 years. All right, then from there you went on to Dallas. You said you had we work with the Cowboys. Tell me a little bit more about your Dallas experience, please.
Again, I worked for the CBS station there, hosted the Jimmy Johnson Show, broadcast the Dallas Cowboys on TV, their TV games, and I just had a really good time. But that's where my wife got cancer. We were doing the first game of the season in Tokyo, and she went with me and was complaining about how her stomach didn't feel right, and she was always in great shape. All this other, and she just didn't feel right. So when we got back, we got off the plane. I took her immediately to a doctor. The doctor found a basketball-sized tumor in her abdomen and gave her 3 months to live. So.
Wow, what a shocker for you.
Moved to Albuquerque to try to find treatment for her.
Okay, and then as we go to Albuquerque, I know you and I talked about the fact you covered the Lobos over at the Pit in Albuquerque.
Yeah, I did their games.
Did you? What, play-by-play or
color?
Color.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a game over at the Pit one time a long time ago. It was a pretty cool place. It's really intimidating.
Oh,
and not only that, the people over there are really on top of you, so it's not a whole lot of room.
Yeah.
Did you cover any NCAA tournament games? Because I know they've hosted tournament games. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of them.
At the Pit. Yeah, they've had a good history, a good run of hosting the NCAA, although now the NCAA goes for a football stadium for the Final Four, of course.
But I was in Indianapolis for UCLA and Louisville. That was a great because UCLA was the bottom ranked team in the standings that year, and they got all the way to the championship game with Kiki Vandeweghe.
Oh wow, yeah. There's a name, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so from Albuquerque, you go to Palm Springs. I want to hear
Palm Springs to retire. I just wanted, I just didn't want to deal with it anymore in the broadcasting, and I missed my wife, so I was just going to retire. And found out I was a lousy golfer, so I did some TV in Palm Springs. I did like entertainment type stuff, where I did movie reviews and that sort of thing. And that was kind of fun. So I went from there to San Diego and did the same thing in San Diego. But that got boring real quick. So I got back into sportscasting.
Right, and then from there you went on to Idaho Falls. Is that correct?
Idaho Falls, Idaho, which was market. I went from market 2 to market 163. So,
Wow, okay.
but again, I had a really great time. I loved the people there, just really nice. I lived close to my son. My son lives in Jackson, Wyoming, and so I was really close to him. I actually did some stories on his kids who were playing football, and it was just a great time.
Yeah. Now, when you were in Palm Springs, did you ever hang around with all those golfers? There's so many golf tournaments. I mean, you had the Bob Hope, the Bing Crosby Clam Bake. You had the Andy Williams San Diego Open. I was telling my friend the other day, I missed that, where all the Glenn Campbell had his name on one tournament.
I
miss all that celebrity stuff.
Yeah. That was fun. I played in the Bing Crosby.
And of course, President Ford, Gerald Ford, played in that tournament a lot.
Yep.
All right. Well, then from there you went on to Bozeman, Montana. This was really funny, George, when you told me that Ted did rodeo work. What was that like?
Oh, I love rodeo. I rode the rodeo circuit as a kid, junior rodeo. Grew up on a farm in Kansas, so I love covering rodeos. And they're so much fun. They're so exciting. Plus, they're very visual, and television is obviously a visual medium. Right. So you can get great stories, and I love covering them. And like I said, small 8-man football is so exciting. It's just really, really fun.
So did you find rodeo to be a new form passion for you?
No, it was always a passion. I covered rodeo in Los Angeles.
Oh, did you really? No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about rodeo. I don't know what it is about me. I just love auto racing, NASCAR, not so much IndyCar anymore. But IMSA is an interesting thing because you had the endurance racing and all that. But NASCAR, I actually got in a vehicle over at Homestead, Miami, and one of my guys here, who's PR guy that I got to like and friended here, asked me if I wanted to get in a car. I said, "Yeah, are you serious?" No, I'm dead serious. Well, I don't want to say dead because I'm serious. Okay, so he said, "You don't get to ride along, you get to drive." Well, I said, so that sounds pretty cool. Then I tell my wife, it's the best day of my life. And then she's looking at me, what? Not getting married to me was? So you don't understand. I've been wanting to go ahead and jump in one of these bad boys for a while. I did 147.54 miles on these laps. And I love the way the PR guy said, man, I love the way you sized up the track and then felt it out. Then you just put your foot on the gas and never left for so many laps. It was really neat.
Well, I did a stock car race in Southern California. They tore it down. I can't remember. Ontario. That's where it was.
Oh, Ontario Speedway. Sure.
Ontario Speedway.
That's a super speedway.
Huh?
The super speedway.
Yes, right.
I think it was replaced by Fontana, if I heard correctly, wasn't it?
Yeah. I went over 200 miles an hour.
Did you really?
That's a real I'll tell you.
So tell me about an adrenaline rush. Are you like I am that you believe in adrenaline rushes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I'll tell you a story. Because I used to like doing these offbeat stories. So it wasn't just the Dodgers and Lakers and Rams that I did other type things. So there was an air show and they were doing all these aerobatics and that sort of thing. And I was a pilot. And so I done some stuff. And there was a wing walker. And so I do this whole story on this wing walker. And he says to me, do you want to try it? And at ABC, they always wanted reporter involvement. So I said, sure, I'll do it. So he gets me up on the wing of this airplane and he says, how much do you weigh? And I said, about 220. He said, good, because the limit is 230. You can't, the plane can't take anything more than 230.
Really? No kidding.
Well, at this point, I couldn't admit that I had lied to him and I weighed 235.
Oh,
right.
So now I'm thinking, okay, 5 pounds, nobody's gonna know. So there's a safety strap he ties on me.
Yeah.
And he says, when we get in the air, you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on how you're doing.
Okay.
I said, great. Off we go. As we take off down the runway, I feel this flapping against my leg, and I look down, and the safety belt has come loose.
Oh,
really? Wow.
So I'm standing there holding on to a bar with nothing
No kidding.
oh my God.
keeping me safe.
Wow.
And I don't want to let go to give him a thumbs down. So
Right.
off we go, and we get about 1,000 feet in the air, and he starts wiggling his wings, asking me if I'm okay. Well, I'm not going to let him know because I'm not going to take my hands off the bar.
Right.
So he immediately goes into a spin and starts flipping the plane upside down.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, oh crap! But it pushed me against that bar, and I was never in any danger apparently. But then we still had to land. After about 3 hours, it was probably 5 minutes, but it seemed like forever. So we come in for a landing, and now I'm thinking, oh crap! I've lied to him about how much I weigh. So we're going to have a hard landing, and he's going to bounce me off.
Wow.
But he was a really good pilot, and I came out of it okay.
Oh man.
Well, it's amazing, how you say that, because I went to Las Vegas one time with a girlfriend, and we took one of them helicopter rides or a small plane. They made me sit in the middle because all these foreign people were skinny on both ends, and I had to have me in the middle to balance the stupid aircraft out. It was unreal. I know it was unreal. All right, so I'm going to bring up a couple names here, okay? And I want you to give me the best association that you can. Tommy Lasorda, what's he like?
He and I had we locked horns from the time he was made manager, and I once did a story. This was before everything was televised, but in this case, the Philadelphia Phillies were broadcasting their game back to Philly.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to send a camera crew to the game. I could just take the televised version that was going back to Philadelphia.
Right.
Well, during the game, there were all these shots of Tommy yawning. So, and the Dodgers were on like a 5-game losing streak or something.
Right.
So I do this whole thing that night about how everybody is tired of the Dodgers losing.
Mm-hmm.
Even Tommy Lasorda. And after every play, I would show him yawning. Well, he had a conniption fit.
There you go.
And just went
Oh yeah.
crazy. He just was nuts about it. Just
wow.
handle. You've heard some of the great Tommy Lasorda tapes where he goes crazy on reporters. Well, he went that way with me. Wow. So I literally did not talk to him for 2 years. 2 years. And finally, the GM of the Dodgers and my GM, got together and we said, this is ridiculous. We've got to stop this. So they agreed that we would meet in the clubhouse before the game and we'd talk it out. So I get to the clubhouse, I walk in, and the Dodgers had in their dressing room, they didn't have the toilets covered. There were no doors on the toilets. Tommy Lasorda, as soon as I walk in, comes walking out of the toilet with his pants down around his ankles. And he looks at me and says, oh, SHIT. But that got us back together again, and we kind of made friends after that.
Well, Tommy Lasorda and I had a good relationship. Then again, I didn't work with him on a daily basis. I always saw him in spring training at Vero Beach and all that. So, so all right, let's talk about Pat Riley. What was it like with him?
Oh, the best. I love Pat.
Did you?
I thought he was great. Many people don't realize that Pat was the color announcer for the Lakers when everything happened and Magic got the coach fired and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I like that.
And Jerry Buss held a press conference to announce the new coach. We're all there. And names don't come to me. The franchise. Who am I talking about? The great Laker. whose picture is on the franchise.
You talking
Jerry West. Jerry West.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So Jerry West is the GM at this point,
Mhm.
kind of part-time. And so Jerry Boss gets up and says, "All right, we're here to announce the new coach of the Lakers. Please welcome Jerry West." And Jerry says, but no, that's not what we agreed on. No. I mean, literally, that's what he said. No. Oh, Jerry says, "Oh, that's right. We agreed on Pat Riley. That's right. Pat Riley, come on up here."
Oh my gosh.
That's how he was named head coach of the Lakers.
Well, no conversation talk about LA would be complete unless I mentioned John Wooden.
The greatest coach of all time.
Yeah.
I was at his retirement ceremony, and it just broke your heart. Tears come to my eyes when I think about it today. He was brilliant, and he would cut your heart out. You know, he was tough as nails.
Let me tell you, I interviewed him over at Pauley Pavilion when the University of Georgia went to visit UCLA and coach. I got a good tape recording of him. And one of these days, I'll probably get some of these old cassette tapes and put them on a disc, and who knows what I'll do with them so people can hear them. But
The Wizard of Westwood.
Yeah, Coach Wooden gave me some great advice. I talked to him about his pyramid of success. One of the nicest people I've ever dealt with, and I know he's the greatest coach of all time. So
he never made any money. He worked like for $35,000-$40,000 a year.
Yeah, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, I bet he probably made more money after his coaching career than he did during his coaching career, didn't he?
I don't think he made much. He had a camp, but how much money can you make at a camp?
No, that's true. That's true. So Vin Scully, I bring his name up.
Oh, the greatest baseball announcer of all time.
Yeah.
And maybe they made it the greatest announcer because he did football, he did golf, he did all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, he was one of the best.
He covered
and the nicest guy you've ever met.
I never had the good fortune to meet him. Every time I went to Vero Beach, I always missed him by about a week because that flight from L.A. And so
he didn't like going to Vero Beach. He didn't like doing those games.
Yeah, that's what I heard. So he would make an appearance a little bit and then go bolt back to Southern California. So when we talked, all right, when you talked about Magic, was he, like you said, did you really enjoy working with Magic quite a bit?
Magic was magic. I mean, that smile was legit. That's how he was. I was there the night the NBA changed, and that's the first game of the season. Magic's rookie year. Kareem hits a skyhook, give him a 1-point win over San Diego. And Magic comes racing across the court and jumps into his arms. Well, you just didn't do that back then. You know, professionals didn't do that. But Magic did. And it ignited the whole Laker phenomenon, in my opinion. That night is what started it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to some of the other markets. You said in 1980 you worked in New York. Is that correct? Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah.
And then you also, but I'm amazed that when I look at where you've been, you really haven't done a whole lot of things east. We know Alaska and Hawaii. I mean, I'm sure they would have been interesting for you. I can only imagine.
I actually auditioned once in Hawaii and didn't get it.
You auditioned in Hawaii at Honolulu Station?
Yeah.
Wow.
No kidding. Can only imagine what it would have been like. So, and then you haven't done a whole lot in the southeast and the northeast. Do you feel times that you wish you had gone east a little bit so you can maximize your visibility around the country? Or because I know you did a lot of stuff mainly on the West Coast.
No, I had a fabulous career. I wouldn't change a day. I wouldn't. Okay. I'm one of those guys, you always hear on his deathbed, nobody ever wished he had worked more. Well, I'm one of those guys that doesn't feel that way. I loved my work. I couldn't wait for the weekend to end. I couldn't wait for Monday to start. So, I mean, I loved, like I say, I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
So let's go back to LA. I know that I'm going to mention some names, do a little name dropping in LA.
Okay.
Andy Lozano was a guy that I knew in Miami, and I went out and visited him in LA for the '84 Olympics when I was doing my stuff. What do you remember about Andy Lozano?
I don't remember much, to tell you the truth.
Well, he worked on the weekends too.
Yeah. What station?
The one that Rogan was at. I think it was NBC.
NBC. Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Fred Rogan. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually took me in to see Johnny Carson's studio back then. It was pretty cool watching the whole thing. All right,
I was on Carson one night. Boy, that was fun.
Oh, did you really? No.
Yeah.
Did you meet Ed McMahon?
What's that?
Did you meet Ed McMahon?
Oh, yeah.
Johnny's sidekick? Yeah, he was a good guy.
Johnny Carson wasn't. He wasn't there that night.
Oh, okay.
The woman who always filled in for him did the show that night.
Joan Rivers?
Joan Rivers, yes.
Yeah.
But Johnny and I did the LA Open tennis tournament one year.
Oh, yeah, Johnny.
So I got to know him pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's go down the list of sportscasters. Jim Hill, obviously a big.
Sure, Jim was my weekend guy.
Oh, was he?
At CBS when he first came there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story about Jim Hill.
Sure.
It's not a very nice story, but it's absolutely true. He and Stu Nahan were friends in San Diego. Nahan had been a sportscaster in San Diego when Jim played there, the Chargers.
Right.
So he comes up to LA and he's helping Stu Nahan out on stories instead of me. And I'll never forget, George Allen comes in to take over the Rams job. And we're at the airport and I'm trying to get close to him. And Jim Hill is helping Stu Nahan get to him. And I got really pissed off. I mean, I just came unglued, but nothing ever happened about it.
Oh, wow.
So.
And George Allen's a Detroit guy, too. George Allen came from Detroit. Yeah.
Oh, did he? Oh, you talk about
a
guy. I got to spend an evening with him once, just watching a game. And it was so much fun.
Yeah. Good man.
All right, so let's transition over to Stu Nahan. Good segue. Then again, all three of us ought to know what a segue is on this show, right? So, all right, well, we'll talk about Stu Nahan. Obviously, he worked for the NBC affiliate, and of course, he helped your buddy. But
actually, he was at ABC when I first went there, because I was at CBS and he was at ABC, and he was the king of the local sportscasters. He was the crown prince of everybody, and we all had to kowtow to him. Well, I wasn't very good at kowtowing. So he and I didn't get along that great. I feel bad about that because that was my fault. It wasn't his. It was my fault. I was the one that was kind of a jerk. And I wasn't as nice to him as I should have been.
Well, I know Stu eventually made it over to the NBC affiliate.
Yes,
so sometimes
he did. When Bryant Gumbel left to go to New York, he replaced Bryant Gumbel.
So how would you describe Stu Nahan if you had to go out there and give an assessment of what he was about? Very
knowledgeable, very active. He didn't do stories as much as he did. He did play-by-play. He did highlights on his nightly show and things. But he was a good time guy. Liked to drink a lot. Always happy. He loved to have people, like I say, kowtow to him.
Was he really? I know he did some clips in the Rocky series as well.
Yeah.
As I remember. All right. Well, I know
was in that too, but I got cut out.
Oh, did you?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had. There was a person named Diana Lewis from Detroit that was obviously one of those too. I don't.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, I remember that for sure. So, all right. So Fred Rogan, we know obviously is one of those individuals that was a mainstay in that market. Any description on him at all?
Well, he came in. He was a really young guy. He was a lot younger than the rest of us, maybe by 10 years or so. And he did a lot of interesting things. He had his Rogan's Heroes segment that was really popular. And that was I think, of the outstanding highlights of the week and that sort of thing. So, but Fred never got out of the studio much. He did most of his stuff in the studio.
Oh, did he?
That sounds like a guy we got in Detroit, Bernie Smilovitz. Bernie's not one that goes out and gets, goes to a lot of games and all that kind of stuff. But that sounds very similar to how you described Fred Rogan.
Remember Keith Olbermann?
Oh, yeah.
Keith was in Los Angeles as a sportscaster,
Oh,
and he never went to games.
Wow.
And that's always the thing I always hated about Olbermann was he always looked for the negative. He was always looking for the bad things that happened, and I got real tired of that. He was a real jerk in person, but so, talk about a jerk, Brian.
We had a guy named Al Ackerman in Detroit. Al Ackerman was very negative. He came down hard, especially on the Detroit Lions. And the general manager, Russ Thomas. But Al Ackerman was kind of that mold here in Detroit.
Yeah, I heard. All right, so you talk about Brian Gumbel. All right, so go ahead and continue on with Brian Gumbel. You say he was
just an incredible jerk. I'll tell you a story.
Go ahead.
We were at Vero Beach at Dodger training camp one time, and some fans came up to us and they said it was Stu Nahan, Brian Gumbel, and I. And so the fans came up to us and said, "Are you guys cover the Dodgers? Are you LA sportscasters?" And Brian Gumbel says, "Well, those two are. I'm national." So that's the kind of guy he was.
Wow. I don't know. You know what? What I watched him on NBC, he never impressed me. There was something about him I had an uneasy feeling about. He reminds me of a guy that went in there to do the bare minimum with his job without having to go do any more than he was supposed to do.
I'll tell you, his HBO show is really good, though. That Real Sports show is really good.
Yeah, but when I'm talking about what he did at NBC and some of these other stuff, I don't know about the HBO show. I don't really watch it, but I know a lot of times that sportscasters will take shortcuts in this business to try to do what they've got to do, and especially in their bigger markets, they have more staff to work with. And me personally, I don't know what it'd be like if I never went to a game because I enjoy being there, being a part of the action. But a lot of people don't really care to do that. So, all right,
I did.
What's that?
I did.
What's that?
I love being there.
Oh yeah. I don't really, I do a lot of these shows in my office and where I'm at home tonight. But I'm going to tell you, I take as much pride what we do on the road as I do doing these particular shows because, there's a certain feel about a story that you can get when you're there than there is when you're remote. And COVID-19 tested a lot of us in terms of the remote side, where I understood why I always did it, but I don't know. To me, the face-to-face has always been the way to go. So now let's go to Boise, Idaho. You told me that they don't cover sports at the CBS station.
The CBS station does not have a sports department. You believe it?
No,
it's
crazy.
So bad.
So where do you think local news and sports fits into the realm of things? I know nowadays you're lucky to get 2.5 minutes of sports coverage over a 28-minute. Do you think that places like ESPN and all these other places have devalued local news to a point where they don't invest as much money into it as they used to?
Yeah, the local news directors who never liked sports to begin with believe that anybody who cares about sports goes to ESPN.
Yeah, I kind of figured that.
But I always covered sports for the non-sports fan. I wanted women to watch my sports segment. I wanted non-sports fans to watch it. So that's why I did the offbeat things. And as a result, it was very successful.
We used to have a guy in Detroit named Don Shane, and he had a little segment called Dare Don Shane. Dare him, like you said.
Yeah.
You said on the wing of the airplane. He didn't do that, but he would do crazy stuff like that, Donnie Shane. And the viewers really liked him on the ABC affiliate here in Detroit. Don Shane, he's retired now to the state of Arizona.
Well, plus it was fun,
Yeah.
It's not much fun sitting around the studio, but it was fun going out doing that stuff.
So let's go back to LA for a second. Okay. We know Fred Rogan, I just mentioned, retired, but who would you say were the best sportscasters in LA during the time frame that you were there?
Then, clearly, I was not a big fan of Chick Hearn, although I know a lot of other people were.
Okay.
The problem with Chick Hearn, in my opinion, was he tried to direct everything because he did both radio and television. So he was always telling the TV people what to shoot and how to do it. That's something I didn't like that very much. Who was the guy who did the Angels?
What about Dick Enberg?
Dick Enberg, that's who I was trying to think of.
Did you know Dick very well?
I knew him very well. In fact, I lined him up with my apprentice.
Did you really?
Yeah, they had a really strong love affair for quite a while.
Wow,
Yeah, Dick is another guy came from Michigan. Yeah, and
really
went out west. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't he?
Wonderful guy.
Go ahead in
Guy.
Central Michigan, I believe, George.
Yeah, Central Michigan, right? Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Dick Enberg. Yep. Well, he was born in Mount Clemens. He was born in near Detroit in a city called Mount Clemens. But yeah, he went to then they moved up to Central Michigan. And Dick Enberg, he was a great guy. I really enjoyed him too.
All right, we want to mention Ralph Williams just popped in, just saying hello to us. So we got somebody out there that now knows who you are, Ted Dawson. Ralph Williams.
Hi, Ralph.
How you doing, Ralph? Good to see you, my friend. So, all right, so now I have to ask you this question because I have a guy that's an author on this show. Have you ever thought about writing a book, Ted?
You know what? I have tried. I have started writing books, and they even bore me. So I figure if I can't entertain myself, I can't entertain anybody else.
No kidding.
Oh, never underestimate your ability, Ted. I know. I've been talking to Scott about writing a book for a long time, and I know he's interested in doing it and doing his journaling now. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As long as,
I think the one thing that probably motivated me to do it, though, Ted, was when I survived that Rolex 24. I mean, my goodness, you can talk about all the big events you cover, but anytime you can cover an event for the better part of 30 hours in a row as an individual accomplishment, Ted, I have to tell you, I've done a lot. I've covered 4 Super Bowls. I'm sure you've covered lots of mega events I won't even get into tonight. Although, NBA, we all know that NBA is probably king in LA. We're not talking about the Sacramento Kings, maybe an analogy, but you have an LA Kings out there. It's just a king thing anyways. But to me, when you can cover a race for 24 hours, 30 hours in a row, I think that to me goes down as more of a personal accomplishment to be able to do something like that. So I guess we got when we look at this show here, I want you to go out there and give advice to youngsters getting into business, or is there any such thing in this day and age of doing it?
Well, the first thing is to love it and know that you can't do anything else because it's not going to pay you very much to start out. Now, if you make it to the top, you'll get rich, but you're gonna eat a lot of beans when you start. I mean, a lot of beans, and maybe throw in a hot dog once in a while. So you gotta love it. You got to do it for the love, but don't do things like memorize statistics. Statistics are the most boring thing on television. Don't ever use statistics on television. Learn backgrounds about athletes and coaches and people who do interesting things. That's the advice I would give to a young person: is just do colorful, interesting stories.
Right. Well, that's what this business is all about.
And that endeared Tiger fans to one Ernie Harwell.
Yeah.
Scott and I know very well, and Ernie Harwell was a great storyteller.
Not
like these guys today, Ted. Like you said, they worry about statistics and the velocity of the speed of the ball and all that crap.
Yep.
Ralph Williams is full of kind words. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Ralph Williams in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, he is out of Pittsburgh. So
yeah, you talk about a great announcer over there, Bob Prince.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So I've always been intrigued when I talk about somebody that is an old school person like the three of us are. So tell me, what are your thoughts about new media, podcasts, and social media, and how times have changed?
Well, they've certainly changed because, excuse me. And by the way, I have a disease called a spasmodic dysphonia, which is why I had to retire. It attacks your vocal cord. So I apologize for being so rusty sounding today. So anyway, that's
no need
what I have going on with my throat.
Well, we won't tax you too much longer, but boy, your stories are addictive, and I know they're entertaining for the people we're going to send them to. It doesn't matter if they come out in a horse, whatever. At least they're coming out.
I have lots more, some of which are true.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Well, all right. So talk about new media, though, Ted. I mean, podcasts and social media.
Again, I'm not too familiar with it, except when somebody asked me to be a guest on their show or something. Because when I started, there were three TV networks, and in most markets, there were only 2 stations. You would get a CBS and then a combination of NBC and ABC. Those were in lots of markets. And finally, in about the mid-1960s, ABC became more popular on its own and became kind of like Fox is now. But people don't remember that Fox started out as nothing. I had a chance to go to Fox, and I said, I don't want to be on Fox. I had the same thing with ESPN. I had an opportunity to be the host of their afternoon show, and I said, I don't want to be on cable. Nobody watches cable. Shows how much I know. So
I hate to say this, but with all the streaming business, I have a feeling that cable viewership is down a lot. So you may not be that far out of the way. But I got to tell you how times have really changed now. And back in Metro Detroit, we had ABC, NBC, CBS, and the Independents. But we were lucky to have Windsor, so we got the CBC, so we knew it hockey night in Canada. So, we kind of treated everybody. We got that extra station that nobody could get, plus the Independents. I mean, but back anytime you live on a border with Canada, you get an extra one.
Yep, Seattle, and Buffalo and Detroit were the 3 that could take advantage of like Scott said, CBC's version of Hockey Night in Canada, and their Olympics coverage is much broader than ABC or NBC.
Oh, that's interesting.
CBC.
So Ted, when you look at your entire career and knowledge in the business, I know you enjoyed and your goal was to get to LA. Do you find a lot of times, maybe now in the LA market, rather than people, sportscasters that go out there and go through the ranks to get to these places, that many of these TV stations are finding a lot less cheaper options up in their market, like even in LA, or do you still think they have to work their way up to get to LA?
I don't really pay a lot of attention to it, so I don't know anybody who's on the air in Los Angeles now. Jim Hill is still at CBS, and I know there's a Oriental or an Asian guy who's on this ABC station. That's all I know. I don't know anything about the local stations at all. But I do know that young people who want to start, who have to start in a small market, are so consumed with getting to a bigger market that they forget to have fun in the small market, because there's lots of fun to have in a small market.
Yeah, I would think, to me, being in a smaller market, you get more creativity. Your station director depend on you a lot more to come. One thing I always love to do is I love to hunt stories. To me, I think that's the most fun, whether it's produced by shows like we're doing tonight or hunt stories. That to me is fun. I mean, and one thing I will tell you about Andy Lascano, even though I know you didn't know him as well, but I worked with him for a while. The one lesson he always taught me, though, Ted, was to always be different than everybody else and outwork anybody.
Oh, yeah. Right.
If you can be different and you can outwork anybody, you can't. There's no way you can lose. And I take advice to heart.
I tell kids that for TV stations, their motto is unique is what we seek.
Mm-hmm.
Try to be unique.
That's a good
one.
Make
yourself unique.
Unique is what we seek. I like that.
Remember that one, George. Write it down. You'll be quizzed on Monday. Oh, no, not. Of course, George knows. He's one of these old school guys where I had to educate him with new media, because when we started back in the day, it was FCC, not all this other business that we all knew that we had to adhere to regular rules or we get fined and fired.
That's right.
Yeah, unreal. So one or two more questions, Ted. We appreciate all the time you've given us tonight. Would you say that you had more fun in the smaller markets per se?
Yes.
Working
absolutely
in the market. Yeah. And why was that?
Just, again, more creativity, more access, more ability to get out and do things.
Okay, it's
those
20
are very
degrees.
good factors.
It's 20 degrees in Boise, Idaho, but it's going to be a whole lot warmer in Arizona. Do you want to make
That's
a
right.
prediction?
Oh, there's no question. Philadelphia is the best team in the NFL.
Okay, give me a score.
28-20.
Not bad. What about you, George?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas City, and I'm going to take them by a very slim margin, though, 27-24.
And I'm riding Ted's train, boy, like I did in 84. I'm going to go Philly 33-27. I have to do, Ted. Come on,
There
really.
you go.
I mean, I'm telling you. So, I want to point out again in a moment here how you get a hold of us. But I do want to let everybody know if they want to email us, they can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Tribune South. On our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Candy Ebling does a sensational job putting the shows up and the content. And I'll tell you, want to talk about an MVP. This girl is definitely it. Okay. We don't have to argue with that because it is what it is. You talk about controlling and making sure everything goes on par. She is one of those individuals that has actually turned herself into a good media person, even though she has a day job. She takes pictures with me. So, Candy is a jack of all trades and probably master of a lot more than we are able to announce on this show. But I will point out that the Sports Exchange can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button. Okay, red, we know it's a red light, but also hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. So this is the way it works these days, is get as many as we can. But, again, what we really like to do is be able to stretch ourselves out at numerous platforms, and that's what we're able to do. George, any other questions for Ted?
No, Ted, the only other thing I wanted to share with you is you mentioned about, now, you didn't cover the Olympics in Sarajevo, did you?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, I went on the press junket in November of 83.
So did I. I was there.
You were on it too?
Absolutely.
We went to Sarajevo and then we went to Dubrovnik.
Yep.
And Jim McKay was, oh my God. Scott,
George,
I tell you.
Our past with this guy through the Olympics.
I didn't know that Dubrovnik. I
was on that trip too, Ted. Unbelievable. In November. Remember, it was before Thanksgiving. November of 83, we went.
I turned 40 in Sarajevo.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well,
I had my first lobster in Dubrovnik when they took us to Dubrovnik for 2 days. Remember, at the end of the trip, that was the first time I ever tried lobster in my life.
Oh.
And Peggy Fleming sat next to me on the bus when we were doing one of the bus trips to get from one venue. The lovely Peggy Fleming sat next to me.
Yeah.
What a great experience talking to her.
What a beautiful lady.
Oh, she's terrific.
She and my wife were best friends.
She is great.
George. We're connected to Mr. Dawson through the Olympics.
See?
Now, I know I'm full of tough questions for you, my friend, but tell me your favorite athlete of all time.
Either Kareem or Arnold Palmer.
Okay.
One of those two.
Okay.
Two greats. Oh, wow.
No, George, this guy, we know where the history is here with him anyways. And I knew I invited this guy on the show that he definitely spoke our language for sure. I always talk about what mine are back and forth to everybody. When I get somebody new on the broadcast, I definitely like to pick their mind as well.
Oh, absolutely. No, that was great.
I think Muhammad Ali was kind of fun.
Oh,
but he got tiring after a while.
Yeah, but I got a picture of Muhammad Ali with a fist on my jaw. And I'll tell you what, if a picture is worth 1,000 words and he started coming up with Parkinson's degrees, nobody would know it with the power of the Polaroid or whatever. Stupid thing. And speaking of, we're going to segue over to George Eichhorn's book, because even though you didn't write a book, I happen to be in a book, still wanting to write a book. So George, pull that bad boy out and let Ted know what you've done, especially knowing you're a fellow sportscaster anyways. You can appreciate a guy that does this. Take a look at that, Ted. Can you see it?
Can you see? Look at Scott and Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. And then Jimmy Connors is above, Ted.
Yep. I wrote the book. I wrote the book, Ted, on Detroit sports and Michigan sports broadcasting on the air. And,
good for you.
Yep. And it was a lot of fun writing the book and talking to guys like Ernie Harwell and Bud Lynch and Bruce Martin. And, we've had so many great announcers here in Detroit. It's been incredible. But yeah, the book's available from Arcadia Press and available. There's a link on the South Florida Tribune website. I write for Scott's South Florida Tribune and Motor City Tribune. I write for a publication weekly in Detroit called the Detroit Monitor. And you can find me at Yahoo at gicorn@yahoo.com.
I just heard that some poll picked the top 50 sportscasters in Los Angeles history.
Right.
And I was honorable mention. I didn't even make the top 50.
Oh,
Really?
that's
so
not fair.
You feel a little Rodney Dangerfield about that with the disrespect there, or what?
Yeah, I could care less.
No.
Well, let's put it this way. You've already gone on our show and said you like the smaller markets better than the bigger ones.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I got news for you. Like I see a lot of times with college football or college sports, sometimes a relatively experienced individual like yourselves have been there and done that with the bigger place, and they look for more job security at a lower market. And I think one guy that stands out to me is Frank Solich, who made a name for himself over at Ohio University. Yeah. Howard Schnellenberger did it here at FAU, and the list goes on. And you're one of those kinds, and a lot of younger guys use those jobs as stepping stone jobs just to get bigger ones. And I know their parallels run similar when these young guys look to get bigger, and then the other ones go down to smaller markets. And I tend to think that you're a lot more appreciated in a smaller market anyways than you probably would in a bigger market. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Detroit. We're not too big and we're not too small. We're kind of in the middle in Detroit.
So everyone
just got to get that crime cleared up.
We're working on it.
Okay.
So for those of you just joining us, my name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Man. Please be joined by George Eichhorn and Ted Dawson. We are thrilled to have Ted on. He's been in business 54 years and has a lot of wear and tear on himself. And I'll tell you what, when you last 54 years in this business, you are doing, as Tony the Tiger would say, you are doing great. Oh, I don't know how good my station is, but whatever. Depends on how much caffeine I've had tonight, knowing I have an early flight. I don't even care. I'm having a blast doing this. So we're going to get it out there, let everybody know that Ted Dawson is alive and well in Big Sky country. I mean,
that's right.
Big Sky.
Beautiful.
Area most people think, okay. Big Sky country. Isn't it beautiful up there or what?
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, that's unreal. I mean, and I got to tell you, some of those matchups during college basketball from the Big Sky Conference out there are pretty interesting to watch. And I know you probably covered a fair amount of those games too, haven't you?
No.
Yeah. So
they're fun to watch because they're both so terrible, but they're evenly matched.
Yeah, that's
Big
true.
Sky has to be the worst basketball conference in the country. I don't think they've ever won an NCAA tournament game.
No, but I'll bet but you know what? When you're living in Big Sky country where you're at, I'll bet everything's so much more relaxed out there. All you have is wildlife circulating around your house and all that stuff, and enjoy nature.
That's right.
You said earlier, a lot of people tend to retire up there. You said Phil Jackson is up in northern Montana. Who's the other one that you say lives in Montana? Bob Knight?
Bob Knight, yeah.
And you say you talk to him every once in a while?
Jack Nicklaus lives around Bozeman, too.
Oh, Jack Nicklaus moved to Bozeman?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I know he's a big Palm Beach guy. I guess he probably moved out of Palm Beach Gardens.
Well, he can probably live wherever he wants.
Yeah.
Unreal. Well, I'll tell you what, I can tell one thing about this show has been a trip down memory lane. And Ralph Williams, I want to thank you for popping in here to join all of us as well. But, Ted, I can't thank you enough for coming on here on the Sports Exchange, and having you on with George and I, to me, has been very, very delightful. And we've enjoyed your presence and your stories and your candor. And it's just so glad our paths crossed tonight. So want to wish you a happy birthday. Again, I know you're turning a young 79. I'll probably write it on your timeline a little bit tomorrow at some point. But meanwhile, if I don't quite get around to it, you'll know I'm on an airplane. I'll get around eventually when I land. Maybe, obviously, my seat strap will be a little bit different than yours on Spirit Airlines, but nevertheless, we'll let Spirit do the talking, and they're not paying for my advertising. It just means I'm letting them know that's where I'm going to go tomorrow.
Okay.
So, but meanwhile, Chad, thank you very much for joining us, and I will continue to stay in touch with you. And God bless, and I hope you continue to enjoy your retirement. It's been really
wonderful. Guys.
A lot of pleasure.
Having me.
Pleasure having you. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.